So, welcome to TheDustyFeet.com, because this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation, where belief understandings, they may be challenged, divine misunderstandings, they may exist in traditional teachings, they just might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. So, feel free to journey around the space. Explore. We have many different topics for discussion. Outside the class, Sons of the Father, the Bible Project, Aleph Beta, Follow the Red String, and more. So lend your ear, then lend your voice. Join a conversation, start a conversation, ask questions. Because on this journey, you're probably around folks that just might be pondering the same thing. Community that can build and connect. So come in and join us. And welcome to the And good evening. It's July 4th, 2023. Yes, it's Independence Day here in America. And I found it coincidental that we've started the last episode in this Matthew series with the crocus flower and the empty tomb. But we're at the end of this series, and yet also leading to new beginnings. Again, with this way of doing things, you can watch the video before we begin chatting. We still hope to keep these to around 15 minutes or so, because we want to make them easy to catch and easier to catch up on. So, welcome to our last Matthew series episode on Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet. In the description below are links to all of the audio, video, and source documents that we use here in the Dusty Feet. We want to make sure that any material we use here is properly credited to those folks who work so hard to bring it to us. Without their efforts, the learning we do here does not happen. And of course on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon if you want to remind. Okay, so again, it is expected that you watch the reference videos first, so you get a context for this discussion and you hear the perspective of the originator. In this case, it's Tim Mackie. On TheDustyFeet.com, in the Outside the Class section, we have this entire Matthew series thus far. Each of the source videos for all of our discussions are always posted there in advance. So, if you have not yet, pause this. Go to TheDustyFeet.com, explore, watch the video, and when you come back, we can chat. And we're back. Okay, so again, I want to make it kind of clear as we begin that I'll be mentioning and discussing some points that'll be probably very challenging for some. And again, I suspect it can divide the room at times. But my intent is to share what I currently believe and I currently understand about the kingdom of God. It's amazing concepts, both the narrow ones and the wide. Okay, the crocus flower and the empty tomb. So I really like the way that Tim started this episode, right? About that there's probably a few folks that know that you're a Christian, right? This follower of Jesus, or as I like to use the name, Yeshua. And yet Tim used the phrase, we are at risk. We have entertained the tip of a very large iceberg, but are we satisfied with that? I'll add, maybe should we be satisfied with that? So Tim gives us a story of a framework. And I enjoy Tim's use of local imagery, right? And with him, the last 100 days in Portland had been the wettest in recorded history. Remember that video's back in 2017, okay? But I bet for Portland, that had to be pretty wet. But that's winter in Portland. But then he contrasts it with the winter in Wisconsin, because he went there for his college. Very different. Snow and deep cold. Yet, with that journey comes the revelation of the crocus flower. And then that begins to remind us that the winter will not be forever, that there will be green again. So there's an interesting quote from Tim that I liked, right? The world seems like it is a certain way. Then something happens that's so out of place, so sudden, that you'd never have seen it coming. And then all of a sudden, the world continues to be what it was. But something's different now, because the crocus has bloomed. Then we get to the end of Matthew 27, and these are disciples of Jesus. At least Tim says it, and I emphatically agree. But these are women. But these are the women that were deeply involved in the ministry of Jesus. They were the ones that were standing there, right? Because who was not there? It's kind of obvious if you've been told or been following the entire story up to that point, right? It's the men. So there was a challenging thought is these women, they really are the faithful ones. These women are the ones who are there at the end. So then Tim goes on with a story about a tomb that was unearthed in the late 60s, in Israel. And it had the remains, it contained the remains of a Jewish man that had been the victim of crucifixion. The point was that the choice of execution wasn't unique to Jesus. Although Jesus himself was very unique, there were many more that suffered that exact same death. Thought to remember that Tim made a point that I found impactful in its use. This was a death for the criminal and the innocent. And in dying this way, Jesus was in participation in solidarity with the oppression of his people. I'll add all of humanity. But I never thought of it that way, in participation and solidarity with us. So not just for us, but with us. So the women are there. They're watching Jesus die. They are the witnesses, because this is their story being told. And after sunset, this rich man, Joseph of Arimathea, uses his status to approach Pilate and ask for Jesus' body so he can put it in his family tomb. And he treats Jesus' body with dignity and honor. Then he protects it by rolling the stone over the opening. But it's the women that stay. They stay at the tomb. The vigil is theirs. We know that Pilate does not really care about Jesus per se, right? Although he did get a reminder that his wife had warned him. But he had no problem with Jesus, so he has no problem letting the rich man, Joseph, bury him, right? It's the Pharisees that remember something that was claimed by Jesus that they reminded themselves of. The 3-day return. So they are the ones that moved to have it sealed, blocked, guarded. And they convinced Pilate that if that were to happen, that his followers were to steal the body and claim such, that the problem would be greater than before. So Pilate agrees and a Roman guard is set. You know something that interested me? Why didn't the Pharisees just use their own slaves and workers, like those that went to get Jesus in the garden, and have them guard and sit vigil? Kind of made me go, So this tomb, this place of honor, this is not the potter's field, for that's for those that are travelers and poor. We talked about that in our last episode. But maybe this move to put him there, the Pharisee did not anticipate it. They had to stick to protocol, tradition, because they couldn't go to Pilate until after the preparation day, the day when the body was carefully prepared, because they would not interfere with that. Ironically, they could not, and everyone knew it. So the women sat vigil, and they watched. They were the ones that had followed Jesus around too. They had been transformed by him as well. So this Jesus, this Yeshua, as Tim shared, had an electric, beautiful, compelling vision of the world. Jesus claimed to be the Son of God. Not God, but his Son, bringing in God's kingdom, his reign, and his rules. You know, this would include all that would respond to his kingdom message, that news, the gospel. That's what needed to be spread. You know, he celebrated life with them and he showed them by example, just how far and wide that group at his dinner table could be. He lived the words that he taught and preached. That how much more would God care for you than nature itself? We can help make this world a safe place to love our enemies. We really don't like that part. And yet, Jesus lived that. And his message, the gospel, it is beautiful and compelling. That's for sure. But then this happened, a brutal death, falsely accused. This was a world rocker for them. Because yes, Rome was the execution tool, but the false accusations, the false testimony, the fear that gripped the impaired leadership in the land, that was the reason. These disciples, their lives, they were shattered because they were all expecting the rescue Messiah, the one to remove them from the very people that were part of his demise. Jesus embraced and participated in our pain and suffering. He is and was one of us. Yeshua understood, understands. That is real. And yet Jesus also told us and wanted us to embrace life, to engage with people, to connect, to be part of a community, to be a part of this world. But at that moment, this is the coldest, darkest moment. No green, no life, maybe even no hope. No one was expecting this ending, especially not any of those disciples, right? Because not even John the Immerser, he's long since dead himself. He's never seen the resurrected Messiah. And he was a herald of him for many years. They are totally unaware that under the ice-cold cover, the blanket preventing green, that the crocus flower will arise. The Marys, they're on a pilgrimage to the tomb. They had been watching them by day and then returning home to sleep, only to return again because they were the ones watching. When they arrived on that third day morning, the tombstone that was meant to guard and conceal, it was moved, was rolled away. A messenger from God had removed the cover, right? And then he decided to take a seat and wait. We get told there's a picture of a radiant being with white clothes. Sorry, no wings. And he scared the guards. He scared them so bad that they passed out. That is an interesting picture. But there's one thing that nags me. There's a nagging thought. I said, did the stone need to be removed? Well, of course, maybe on first thought, you might say, no, it didn't need to. But if so, then why? Jesus still could have met them everywhere that he did. Still would have been him. Or was it merely for us to help us make the leap that this new beginning, to start the change, the new understanding? Because the Messiah is back. The crocus flower is free. These faithful women see the empty tomb. They receive the message from the messenger. Then they run into Jesus. These faithful women, these earnest disciples, they're about to explode with joy. And then Jesus, he tells them, tell the guys to meet him in Galilee. He said he would do that before. Because the funny thing is that in the next few verses says that the disciples, those remaining 11, went to the place that Jesus had told them. Seems they had that slap on the forehead moment, then remembered where they're supposed to meet him. But this would not be like a pop next door down the block, other side of town, right? This place is over 100 miles away, close to 115. Can you imagine the conversations as they traveled this long distance over many days? They had to reach that place because they knew they needed to be there. Interesting. The Messiah had started there, and now he's meeting them there again. This little distant place, this region well north of Jerusalem, this area that included that little town of Styx, Nazareth. And this is where many of them were from, where their friends and family are from. And it's where the Pharisees had said, what good can come from there? Matthew's account, short and sweet, really. But it's the story that the storyteller wanted you to hear. And that wraps up our Matthew series. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it immensely. And I'm still pondering what our next series will be. I'll announce it. I'm trying to figure out what would be a good next role on our Outside the Class homework series. So here's our point to ponder. And I want you to hear that quote again from Tim, because I liked it. The world seems like it is a certain way, and then something happens that's so out of place, so sudden, that you'd never have seen it coming. And all of a sudden, the world continues to be what it was. But something is very different now, because the crocus flower has bloomed. Thanks for being with us tonight as we wrap up the Matthew series with Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet.